Hello.
Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Charles.
Good evening, Anthony. And Sunday night. Been a beautiful weekend. Bird
Tis
song.
the season. Tis the season of sunshine. Going
It
to the
is.
seaside on the east coast and watching Leeds go down.
Well, I wasn't going to even mention the thing that might just possibly have ruined the weekend. I watched instead a play about twitchers, birders, bird
Oh, really?
song, the
Oh, dear.
RSPB in Scarcroft allotment, and that was a way to take my mind off what could be utterly grim, and instead to cherish the wonderful world of nature around us. So I'm in a positive place, Graham, unlike my team.
I believe Leeds played like white doves.
I think they played about almost as close to extinction as the turtle dove. So, yes, they certainly waved the
Well,
white flag yet again.
when you have four managers in 14 months, 15 months,
Yes,
there's only one end result.
there is.
I think they should have kept Marsh. I think that was the big
No,
mistake.
the ideas of Marsh were chronic. So, Graham, we're going to move on swiftly from one thought about what's been a bad year for one beloved football team for potentially what might be seen, you would suggest, as a bad year for films. But is there hope on its way at the Cannes Festival and at Edinburgh Festival? Well, in one word, yes, if one sees The Guardian's review of Martin Scorsese's new film, Killers of the Flower Moon, yet another one of his long films, and never
Yeah,
amounts
but it lasts nearly 4 hours. It's his longest one yet.
I think it's even longer than what was it called the last time? The Irishman. Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty long.
Yeah, nearly 4 hours. This one. So, however, 5-star reviews, and we did say right at the start of the year that probably more than any other filmmaker to look forward to. I suppose Tarantino's last film, his last promised film, is one to look forward to. But a Scorsese film is always worth looking forward to. And neither of us obviously have seen it, so to some extent we have to waffle about the fact that it's been a bad year. How do you judge that it's been a bad year, though?
Well, I can tell you why it's been a bad year,
Yeah.
because I'm now looking back fondly on two films that I criticised when they came out earlier in the year. Tara with Kate Blanchett about the classical music doctor, and Babylon about the 1920s Hollywood filmmaking scene. And at the time I was quite critical, but what's come since, those two are now looking really good.
Well, that must tell you that it's been a bad year then, Graham, because we did find considerable faults in both of those films. Although obviously, I get your point. The Kate Blanchett one, or Kate Blanchett, obviously won one of the big awards, didn't win the other big award.
If you're going to be French, call it Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett. Well, I still think that was a critic's film rather than a public's film, and I struggled with it after a while. But as you say, probably actually in a poor year.
Ideas. They were both making a point, and they were both bold. And unlike a lot of films now, where lots of things happen and there's quite a lot of emotion involved, but it never ends up going anywhere, and there's no real, decisive moment, and there's no real point to it, which seems to be a lot of films these days. At least those films had a definite direction.
Well, certainly the Kate Blanchett film did. Babylon wanted an awful lot of courses for us to wade our way through, didn't it? Seemed to want to have everything on a plate and to eat it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a point there, but it couldn't be bothered to focus on just one point, because the filmmaker's clearly talented. He just got totally carried away with his own brilliance.
I think that absolutely would be indeed perfect way of summing it up. I thought it was Babel as much as Babylon at the time, but we look forward to both that and Ken Loach's talking about what will be his last film.
But you know what else has been at Cannes? There's been Ken Loach, there's been Indiana Jones and Dial Destiny, and I'm a bit of an Indiana Jones fan, so that's good. Jonathan Glazer, one of the greatest British directors of recent years, who did Sexy Beast and Under the Skin. He's back with His Zone of Interest, incidentally based on the book by Martin Amis. And then there's Wes Anderson, he's back with Asteroid City. And then there's Pedro Almodovar, who's back with A Strange Way of Life. So these are all proper film directors who always make proper films, which are always worth watching. So the second half of the year could actually be a great time for films.
So that's something that's positive, Graham. And as a man who likes to say that if one goes to a play and the first half ends up being better than the second, it's utterly frustrating. But if the second half's really good, you can forgive the first half. So
I've seen some films which I was getting a bit annoyed with or weren't perfect, but the last 10 minutes has been great, or even the last 5 minutes has been great. And I'll forgive a film anything if the end's brilliant.
Well, I think we're just going to have patience about this year's films, Graham, because it sounds to me that we are heading into the major filmmakers of the year's movies. And that is something to treasure. And obviously Cannes is where a lot of them are having their first outings. And we hope maybe to see some of the others at the Edinburgh Film Festival as well. So I'm refusing to call it a bad year for film. I think it's too early to say that. I do think
it's church call. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that we're still the level of filmmaking, or the number of films, is still catching up after COVID. This year is still looking to be something of a struggling year commercially, but the film studios are talking about being back to full capacity over the next year. So maybe we're still in a lull anyway, just in terms of getting through the backlog.
Yeah, I think you're right. But what's undermined the whole situation is, as well as trying to recover both in terms of filmmaking and the audience for films at cinema, there's also the growth of streaming channels like Netflix, which now make a hell lot of films which only get limited releases in the cinema and get played first online. So at the same time, you've got traditional cinema struggling a little bit to get back on form. It's also got a new upsetting, not quite a rival, but something which could undermine its position in the long run.
Well, combine that with what we're going to have next in filmmaking, which is AI filmmaking, where you can merge.
Wait a minute.
Well, you can imagine you can reinvent James Dean, reinvent Charlie Chaplin.
We could do this
maybe even merge them.
Why don't we AI the podcast? I don't know. I'm not really.
It's happening. You can imagine them putting together two film stars, seeing what they can create by putting the two together, what it comes up with.
Well, you do know that there's one of the films that can, i.e. Indiana Jones, where the young Indiana Jones does appear, and it is Harrison Ford. And what they've done is they've used an AI program to use real footage of Indiana Jones when he was young, or i.e. Harrison Ford when he was young as the character Indiana Jones. And they've created new scenes with the real Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones when he was young.
Well, we saw that partly in The Irishman as well, didn't we?
But that was only a half a job. They used the actors as they are now and made them look younger with computer technology. What they've done with Harrison Ford is they've used real footage from the past and manipulated it, used information of how he moves and how he looks to create 100% new Harrison Ford. So it's
how do they get him to talk?
Well, they got his voice. Well, once you program the details and the characteristics of anybody or anything into an advanced computer setup or computer program, or even an app, well, it can do that because it's got all the. I mean, how many components are there in someone's characteristics?
Right. So you can even adapt Harrison's voice as it is now, which is inevitably sounding older, but presumably with the technology, they can make him sound younger again.
I suppose you could program in a cast or a basic sketch of a outline for a narrative into a computer for a film, put in the cast members you want, in which characters you want them to play, what sort of characters you want to play, and then AI could come up with the details of the story, and then make all the actors actually do the acting to fit the story. That's bound to be on the cards at some point.
So AI could be a good tool for cinema.
Well, only if you think that art done not by a human is still art. That's the big question. Because are things that aren't from a human idea art, or are they just digital?
Except
nonsense?
that, in that instance, they wanted to create the younger version of the character. They found a way to do it. That is still using the human brain to come up with the idea and then using technology to do it. And film's always been about technology, Graham. Film was itself new technology when it started. Film has always embraced new ways of doing film, new ways of using the camera, new ways of being able to use CGI or whatever. Film has always been about advancing the technology that it's made with, looking for the wow factor. And this is another, it seems to me that this is an aid towards doing that. The criticism always is CGI, etc. Does it make it soulless? Does it make the filmmaking soulless? If it's all just being, it's not the old traditional strength of a film was Bacall with Bogart or whatever, so it was human chemistry. But we are so used to now to, in modern filmmaking, using technology to create wonder and wow factors. And I don't see that changing. I think that's just going to gain momentum.
Well, yeah, it's very hard to stop what they call progress.
Yeah.
But whether it's a good end point is another matter. So, for example, if you could get a computer to answer everything about the entire universe and mankind and the point of it and how it all really began, if a computer came up with the answer, first of all, would you believe it? Because it's not your thinking that's produced this end result, this end idea or fact. It's a computer. And secondly, if a computer came up with a solution to everything, wouldn't you just be a bit annoyed thinking like, oh God, we didn't manage to come up with the idea or the solution. It was a computer. I don't really want to, take that seriously. I just don't think that human beings either are in control or not in control. And once you pass that control over to something that is not human and eventually could become all powerful, I don't think it's a good end goal.
It's very telling, Graham, that the films that we're looking forward to in the remaining part of the year are made by filmmakers who we respect as great storytellers, who also have always in their films had human chemistry as being the key ingredient that makes their films wonderful. So in the case of wanting to see Scorsese, it's because you want to see De Niro still. It's because you want to see DiCaprio still. So it's the human element in it that still draws you in. With Almodovar, for all the flamboyance of the technology that he uses, the colors, etc., that he uses, it's still always about the human interaction in his films. And we know that with Ken Loach, right. His films are completely driven on that very powerfully by their subject matter, and in particular, in his case, political subject matter. So you're not, with new technology, going to be able to replace that. You're just going to be able to use it as a convenient tool, it seems to me, to help you do certain things that would not have been possible before, to put them on screen.
Yeah, but
you can't create human chemistry, it seems to me, with AI. I think that would be surely an impossible challenge.
I'm not. No, I think they might be able to do that, but I think there's another consideration. When these filmmakers that we admire, who have produced or rather created brilliant films, when they make the film, they're aware of the impact what they're trying to create will have on their own producers, their own film studio, and the audience and the critics. So when they make a film, they're not making it in isolation, where they just make any film they feel like making. They work within mental constructs and barriers and boundary lines. And they're aware that if they do a certain thing, it may have a certain impact on the money people and on the audience and on the box office results and on the critics. Yeah. So when you're an artist, you're aware personally of the potential audience and the potential impact. You're going to have to program AI so that when it comes up with a story or a film or a painting or a book, it also is aware of the audience, because AI could come up with a brilliant film, but the film company might say, well, that's just too offensive, or that's just too boring, or we don't think it's going to work. And then the company would just reject the AI film. Or would it then ask the AI program system to come up with a different version of the same film, taking into consideration all the audience potential impact that the film company themselves have predicted? The machinations are just endless on how it would work.
When you've already got a situation where the film companies say, right, okay, film 5 different endings of potential endings, and then they show the rushes and then decide, right, that's the one we're going to use. So we already make decisions that change potentially how films end up. Maybe it'll be an extension of that.
You might be right, Charles.
Anyway, as you say, not a great year so far. room for
without bringing in
improvement.
Isaac Asimov, who predicted all this in the 1940s, I think we should end this line here.
Now, Graham, we were potentially last week going to discuss this point, but I instead did a detour into talking enthusiastically, actually, about how young audiences were responding to the musical Heathers, and it's very much kind of got a cult following, and I didn't find that troubling on one level, because it's interesting when you have conversations with people around you, and you know what they like, etc. But you, nevertheless, this year we've been very aware of behaviour, particularly at musical theatre, and how it's said that it's really got worse at theatres. But you question whether that is a reflection of society changing. And when you say and venues as well, I mean, the venue staff, for example, the training that venue staff have to do is very much tuned into how you need to deal with people who may be being awkward in how they're behaving. And that is a crucial element of it. But I suppose the question really is, why is this happening more? Why do people feel entitled to ruin a performance for someone else, which is now
this is the whole point. It's having been to Rock Horror Picture Show a long time ago, where the audience made a noise throughout the whole show, and it wasn't regarded as ruining it.
No,
we've had news stories about Jersey boys at Edinburgh Playhouse having disruptive members of the audience and fights and stuff. Supposedly, we've had the Bodyguard at Manchester, which was supposedly was forced to end early because people were singing too much and interrupting the stars. But there's a few ways you could look at this. First of all, you could say this is a product. If you're gonna be a conspiracy theorist and believe that man never landed on the moon, you could say this was a publicity stunt by the venues or the production to get more publicity. I.e., they've thought, "Ooh, we can do something with this." That's probably rubbish, but it's not impossible. Or you could say it's the media who've heard about these little things happening at musicals, and the media's thought, "Wait a minute, this is a great story," and the very fact the media's picked up on it has then been regurgitated and repeated by other media, which has made the whole thing snowball into being a much bigger issue than it actually is. So you could say this is a media problem, not an audience behavior problem. But again, I don't know if that's true. Or you could say that the audience themselves have got worse.
I'm going to go down that last line.
Why?
Because I think there is evidence of it. I do think that people seem to feel they can just do what they want, be as noisy as they want. It used to just be the thing that used to irritate was people unwrapping sweets noisily and having no conscience about the noise around them. But there is very definitely a sense that people feel entitled to sing along, even if they sing horrendously badly and out of tune. And you want to be paying money to see people who can sing on stage sing a bloody sight better than someone near you in the audience. And if it's not seen as a sing-song, sing-along show, it's different from concerts.
Sing-song, sing-along, I like that.
It's different from concerts. It's different from going to a festival where an entire audience will sing along to a song on the main stage at Glastonbury, and that sends shivers up the spine of the musicians because it's an extraordinary thing. But everyone is in on that, but they are not all in on it when it's a musical theatre show. And just because a song's well known, it doesn't give permission unless the performers invite you to join in at some point. I think that people are increasingly just thinking, "Oh, we're going to do this anyway," and it irritates. It's a typical sign, yet again, of more selfishness by people who just feel entitled now to do things that were not the case in the past.
I'd love to see that as Shakespeare production, where some of the audience members start actually saying the dialogue out loud. Macbeth with like audience members, not so much heckling as actually taking over the role of the actors from sitting in the auditorium. That'd be quite funny. But
I have sat in films before where people say the lines that they know really well in a film that's familiar to them. Right? Yes.
That's a bit annoying.
Correct.
But I was thinking, like, if they are behaving worse, perhaps it's because of all this pent up energy after the lockdowns during COVID. Or perhaps it's people's lack of respect for authority caused both by the lockdowns and by the hypocrisy of scandals like Partygate. Or perhaps the fact that COVID meant your whole life could be totally changed at a stroke, and your job could be changed at a stroke, made everybody think, wait a minute, if everything's so precarious, why would I bother following the rules? Why would I just do my own thing anyway? Because you can't trust anything now. It could all be wrapped up in that general backdrop of different thinking about how you live your life.
Doesn't mean it's correct thinking, Graham.
I know, I agree, but I did watch the video of some people being removed by the bodyguards from the bodyguard. I mean, they weren't bodyguards, they were just security. Yes. And I have to say, the bit I saw, which is quite short on Twitter, their behaviour didn't look horrendous, and the security people looked a bit OTT. So perhaps venues have changed in the sense that everybody now is so desperate not to offend anybody that perhaps venues now are much less tolerant towards members of the audience who are noisy during a show. That's the other possibility. So rather than it being the audience that's changed completely, it could be the venue's policy towards audience behaviour has changed.
I think it's fair to say that they are more aware of potential situations, and therefore maybe there is a trigger there that wouldn't have been there before. But I think that's come about because of the behaviour. I do think it's that way around. I don't think it's the equivalent of deciding that any member of Republic should be stopped from protesting on the day of the coronation by the convenience of having a new law introduced the day before and then keeping people banged up for 16 hours and then releasing them and saying, well, sorry, we probably didn't need to do that in the first place. I don't think it's that sort of situation. I don't sense that it's preemptive. Indeed, theatres try to do the very reverse of that. They try to give the very best of experiences, and the training is all to that effect, and to ensure that everybody has a good time. That is their skill. A rather different thing happened. Yeah. I went to see Of Mice and Men at Leeds Playhouse, and it was getting to a crucial part of that remarkable piece. And suddenly I was aware of some deep breathing, and then I thought that's the sound of sleep. Anyway, it got louder.
It wasn't you.
It was not me. Stop that. It was not me. It was, and it got so loud, and this snoring got so loud that the entire audience was distracted suddenly from the play. And the way that it got handled in the end was the chap who was sitting nearest to this gentleman managed to catch the attention of one of the ushers, who came and gently prodded the gentleman to wake him up. But now that, you see, is a wholly different scenario of the audience being distracted. Yeah. But that's the way to handle it. No different. Yeah, you just, you gently deal with the incident.
I was once at a movie where the couple behind me were clearly having some sort of sex reasonably loudly, which was obviously embarrassing and not on. And it was Saving Private Ryan was the film, so it wasn't even appropriate.
That's an amazing thing to think about, isn't it? How could Saving Private Ryan stimulate anybody into behaving like that? I don't know.
Maybe it was the sight of a beach and the lapping waves.
Graham, you've never told me that story before. I mean, that's
no, I've embellished it. I was once at cinema, and the couple were doing something behind me who really shouldn't have been doing it at cinema, but it wasn't Saving Private Ryan. That was just my obviously hilarious sense of humor.
Well, so anyway, audience behavior. It's fair to say, therefore, that audience behavior has always been something of a challenge to management. I just think it's become more challenging. I do think that is the case.
I've got a slight feeling.
I mean, I would worry more if it started happening at a Shakespeare play or whatever. Then I would start being concerned more.
So it's all right if it's trashy West End musicals. No, but when it's Shakespeare, you got to draw the line in.
I didn't say that. I think the difficulty is that people do want to sing their favourite songs. But no one so far has felt the need to quote their favourite soliloquy from Hamlet or whatever. That I do think would be a little bit different.
I think you're right, but to be the devil's advocate just for a final time in this issue. For example, when I go and see Harrogate Town play in English Football League Division 2 at Wetherby Road at Environment Stadium.
And congratulations on staying up, Harrogate.
Yeah, very good job.
But
they did an excellent job under the manager.
They did.
But because it was looking dodgy at one point.
It was.
But Harrogate Town is such a civilized club. It's run in a very civilized, intelligent fashion. The fans are very well behaved. It's a real family stadium. It's probably the most civilized club in the Football League.
Well, you walk across the Strait to get there, don't you? That is civilized in itself, isn't it?
Exactly. But when I'm at the ground, I always get annoyed with the referee because the referee undoubtedly is always biased. The team I'm watching. Now, at Harrogate Town, I don't swear when I get annoyed at the referee because I realised that this would risk not only offence to people around me, but also I'd probably get thrown out. But if I was at Ellen Road getting annoyed at the referee, I don't think if I swore at the referee a bit, and I don't mean like excessively, I don't feel like I've been in any risk of annoying people.
I can confidently confirm that, Graham. My language is appalling at football.
Is it?
Yeah, but
oh dear.
Absolutely. Well, I start the season quite controlled and quite passive, but by this stage, the language is just
you're deranged by this point.
Pretty much, and the language is not great. But then
there's you and 30,000 other, 40,000 other Leeds fans foaming at the mouth.
I don't think it's interesting. Is football have audiences behaving worse? I say audiences, crowds behaving worse at football than they ever have. Well, they've often behaved badly in the past. So there's definitely a difference with theatre. I think what we're concerned about with theatre is it going down the line of the equivalent of hooliganism? And I don't think it's going that. I don't think it's going that far. I think that will be extreme. Now, Graham, I do think it's time for an interruption. And maybe a passing thought, if you would, on Martin Amis. Died at the age of 73 from cancer. And I don't know about you, but I've read more of Kingsley Amis than I have of Martin. And that's nothing against Martin. But obviously, writers like Will Self and Salman Rushdie have rushed to say hugely positive tributes to Martin Amis and his impact. And you mentioned earlier a film, of course, and the money, of course, was made into a TV series in, I think, 2010. Rachel Papers, I think, again, was transferred, I think, to the screen. Yeah. How do you judge him? I mean, you can't compare him with his father. That's an unfair comparison. So do you look at the way he used language? Do you look at his impact on fellow writers around him? How do you judge?
The way you look at it is this. I mean, there's an awful lot of good books written by British writers.
Yes.
And still are. But in terms of books that might be discussed at length in a documentary, or that American academics at Yale or whatever would take seriously, there's very few in the last 30, 40 years British writers who you could put in that bracket. Even authors who sell loads of copies, you wouldn't put in that bracket necessarily.
Would you put Ian Rankin in that bracket?
Well, yeah, no, not really, no.
No, you see, I mean, that's very telling, isn't it? You wouldn't.
There's only a select bunch. There's Ian McEwan, there's Martin Amis, there's Julian Barnes.
Yeah.
There's not many others. There was Christopher Hitchens, even though he was a non-fiction
A
writer.
great friend, of course, of Amis, Christopher Hitchens.
Exactly. So the way you look at Martin Amis is he was one of a select bunch of really serious British writers at the top of the intellectual tree who had a national and international impact for a long time. Now, what made Martin Amis particularly special, whether you liked him or not, was that unlike the other writers I've talked about, he didn't shy away from difficult subjects and challenging subjects, and he didn't tackle the challenging subjects in an so tasteful fashion, like a lot of British writers do. So unlike Ian McEwan, who's had loads of films made about his books in the last 20 years, most of Martin Amis's books, post his first flush success in the early 1980s, haven't been turned into films, apart, ironically, from The Zone of Interest, which Jonathan Glazer is just releasing right now.
Yes.
Because the books aren't really easily filmable. They are challenging. So he was one of the few British writers who sold lots of copies, who had a big influence, who was taken seriously internationally, who's dealt with ideas that were challenging in a challenging fashion. And Ian McEwan, for all his talent and skills, isn't that guy. And Julian Barnes, again, isn't quite that guy. There's not many like Martin Amis.
Salman Rushdie? Salman Rushdie?
Yeah. He's a different sort of writer, though.
Yes.
Martin Amis tackled Guardian readers' topics the whole time.
He did. He did.
Feminism, yobbism, capitalism, communism, the Holocaust, all the sort of like topics that Guardian readers care about, but are quite tricky to explore. He took them all on head first and made something interesting and intellectually rigorous about them. A bit like Christopher Hitchens did in the non-fiction, journalistic, political world. And that's what made Hitchens and Amis so important. Where you agreed with them is totally different. So, for example, both Hitchens and Amis, after 9/11, became virulently, temporarily, completely right-wing in terms of their attitude towards both Muslims and liberty and politics. So he wasn't beyond getting it completely wrong, that's for sure.
No. But I mean, that's it. So it's ideas ultimately, isn't it? It's being brave in what you write about, in taking it in an intellectual direction that is stimulating, doesn't draw agreement, is as likely to draw disagreement, but promotes debate. And at that point about it being the Guardian readers, I mean, I think that's exactly the right call on that. I think it's no coincidence that that would be your average Guardian reader, if there's such a thing, would, I think, put Martin Amis as being the most significant of the late 20th century writers. I'm absolutely sure of that.
You're right. I think his one drawback is that he didn't believe in any alternative, which is a bit like Guardian readers in general. They know exactly what they're against, but ask them what they actually want, and it's slightly tricky. And I think that's why people like Hitchens and Amis, who came from, affluent, highly middle class, privileged backgrounds, that was their Achilles heel. Even when they tried to deal with street level topics, which Amis did, they didn't really have the background knowledge and personal experience of a life outside their own nice life. So they couldn't project their dislike of certain aspects of the modern world into any vision beyond criticism. And that was both their failings.
I think it's the nature of an impossible world to solve, Graham. That many a writer, many a writer's role is to ask the questions without being able to come up with the answer.
Yeah, what's different between the modern generation writers and the British writers of the 20s to the 1960s is that communism was such a big idea, left-wing ideas was so all-pervasive for about 40, 50 years. That all writers who were against how society was in Britain had that bedrock of socialism behind their thinking, which didn't mean to say they were socialists, but they had an idea in their heads of a potential alternative, and that affected how they wrote. And Amis and Hitchens didn't. They were cut free of all that ideology, but it left them sort of like in no man's land.
And a no man's land heading towards the right, Graham, which is playing to electoral success in this country for the last 13 years, but doesn't play to the great conscience as to how to improve the world.
Well, yeah, there's been very few great novels written by right-wingers. It just doesn't work. There needs to be...
Peter Lorimer's autobiography was pretty good. Yeah.
Well, I thought he was a left-winger. Was that Eddie Gray?
Right-winger, Graham.
Oh, you're right. Eddie Gray left-wing. Peter Lorimer right-wing. Yeah, sorry. We're back at Leeds United again.
We are. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Now, we're running out of time. We're down to the last minute, Graham. So
there's a band I love from the 60s called The Smoke, who were sort of psychedelic, who did a great song called My Friend Jack, which is a minor hit.
It was a minor hit.
Track. The band were actually from York, and I only discovered that recently. Did you know The Smoke were from York?
I did not know that. That's a smoke screen, and I'm not sure you're right.
No, I investigated it. And when they split up, one of the members became the sound engineer for Boney M, who then covered My Friend Jack. So it became quite circular.
So where is your confidence about the roots that are from York? Because I've not seen this in any history of York bands mentioning the smoke.
There was 2 York bands, the Moonshots and Terry Adams and the Viceroys, who moved to London and then became a sort of York supergroup and renamed themselves the Smoke, and that was it. That's the facts.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they became the Shots first, and then they became the Smoke, hoping to be big shots, but sadly they never quite became big shots.
They faded, as smoke tends to do, disappears.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.